Okay, so today we're going to do examples 8.5, which will be covered on your next quiz. 8.5 is something called dividing polynomials. So today I'm going to teach you how to divide a polynomial like this one here, 3x to the fourth minus 4x cubed plus 12x squared plus 5. We're going to divide that by x squared plus 1. One method of dividing polynomials is called long division. So example number 1 is already worked out here for you. It shows you like how to do long division. So here's some things you definitely need to know. This polynomial that is being divided, so the 3x to the fourth minus 4x cubed plus 12x squared plus 5, that will go in this little, I guess, house-looking thingy. That polynomial that's being divided is called a dividend. You need to know the vocabulary. Dividend. Dividend. So the dividend goes inside this little, I just call it the house symbol. Next, the polynomial that you're dividing by, so we're dividing by x squared plus 1, that is called a divisor. So on your quiz, it will ask you like, what is the dividend? What is a divisor? So make sure you know the terms. So the divisor, x squared plus 1, goes on the outside of the little house. And now the way long division works is make sure that your dividend and your divisor are both like in standard form. So they have to start with the highest degree, so x to the fourth, x to the third, x squared, x, and then the constant. So make sure, same thing with the divisor. It needs to be in standard form. And if you're missing a term, you have to put a placeholder like a 0. So for example, my dividend is missing the linear term, like the x. So notice how I still wrote plus 0x. You need to put that in there for the long division to work. Same thing with the divisor. The divisor is also missing the linear term x. So when I wrote it down, I wrote x squared plus 0x plus 1. So that's what you'll need for long division. You'll need to put the dividend in standard form inside the house, put the divisor in standard form outside of the little house, and then we're going to divide. So here's how that looks. Let's actually try example 2, and then we'll come back to finish looking at example 1. All right, example 2. Go ahead and use long division to divide this thing, 3x cubed minus 8x squared minus 21x plus 56. And divided by x squared minus 7. So again, this is called the dividend. And then x squared minus 7 would be the divisor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the dividend and put it inside the little house. Let me see, 3x cubed minus 8x squared. Minus 21x. Plus 56. So the dividend is already good to go. It's in standard form and is not missing anything. So it's just going inside the little house. The divisor, x squared minus 7, is missing the linear term. So make sure you write x squared plus 0x minus 7. The divisor goes outside the house. And now here is how you start doing long division. The way you do long division, you're going to take the first term of your dividend and you're going to divide it by the first term of the divisor. So here's what I mean. So over here, I'm going to, just separately, I'm going to take 3x cubed, which is the first term of the dividend, and I'm going to divide it by the first term of the divisor, so x squared. So go ahead and divide this. So in other words, simplify. What is 3x cubed over x squared? So if you remember the rules of exponents here, since I am dividing, I should subtract the exponents. So this is going to simplify down to 3x. 3x. So that right here, the 3x, will go right on top of the little house thing right there. So again, step 1, make sure you divide the first term of the dividend, 3x cubed, by the first term of the divisor, x squared. So 3x cubed by x squared is just 3x. Put that on top of the house. Okay, now what you need to do with long division, you need to take that 3x that I just wrote and you need to FOIL it to the divisor. In other words, multiply it to every term in your divisor. So you're going to do 3x times x squared. That should be 3x cubed. Plus 3x times 0x. That should just be 0x squared. And then one more time. 3x times negative 21. Sorry, 3x times negative 7. That's going to be negative 21. X. And then the last step of long division is once you've multiplied your 3x and FOILed it to everything on your divisor, the last step is to subtract. So I need to subtract 3x cubed minus 3x cubed. That's going to be 0, and it should always be 0 for that first term. Now I have negative 8x squared minus 0x squared. That looks like negative 8x squared. Then I have negative 21x minus negative 21x. That looks like they cancel out again. But this time I will write plus 0x because you have to have a placeholder. And then now the final step of long division is you need to take the next term and bring it down. So that 56 that was there, we're going to bring it down and write it as plus 56. And that is how you do long division. We're not done yet because we need to do it again, but that's how you do long division. So let's try it again. And then I'll pause for questions. So one more time, here's the steps. The way you do long division is you take the first term of the dividend. So now our first term is here, negative 8x squared. And you're going to divide it by the first term of the divisor. So let me write it over here. So I'm going to divide negative 8x squared divided by 1x squared. So go ahead and divide that or simplify that. So the first term of the dividend, negative 8x squared, divided by the first term of the divisor, x squared. That should just give you a negative 8, since x squared over x squared would cancel out. X to the 0 is just 1, so just ignore it. And now what you'll do is you take that negative 8 and you put it on top of the little house. So negative 8. And now we need to do the same thing with the negative 8. We need to FOIL it, which means we need to take negative 8 and multiply it by everything in the divisor. So take negative 8, multiply it by x squared, take negative 8, multiply by 0x, and then one more time, take negative 8 and multiply by negative 7. And that's the process of long division. So let me do it here. Negative 8 times x squared will be negative 8x squared. Those will always be the same. Negative 8 times 0x will be negative 0x, or you can just put positive 0x. 0 is positive or negative, doesn't matter. Finally, negative 8 times negative 7 is positive 56. And now you subtract. So when you subtract, the first terms will always cancel out. Negative 8x squared minus negative 8x squared is always going to be 0. Here, 0x minus 0x is 0, or 0x. And then 56 minus 56 is just 0. Okay, basically this one, this example here, number 2, had a remainder of 0. This is called a remainder. So remainder. Okay, so here's what you need to know about how to write your final answer. So your final answer will be it's called the quotient. So let me write it down. Final answer. Final answer. So the final answer is what goes on top of the little house. So 3x minus 8. 3x minus 8. That's called the quotient. So quotient. You need to know those names. So quotient is your final answer. Dividend was your original polynomial that you were dividing, and divisor is what you divide it by. So anyway, so my final answer here, 3x minus 8, is called the quotient. And then you're supposed to do plus the remainder, but here the remainder is 0. So therefore, I'm just going to leave my final answer like that. So this is my final answer, 3x minus 8. And that's because the remainder was 0, so I don't have to plus 0, so just leave it like that. And now the last thing you need to know about remainders. When the remainder is 0, that means that your divisor is a factor of the polynomial. So I need to write that down because you need to know these terms or these concepts for your like take-home quiz. So let me write it here. When remainder is 0, when remainder is 0, it means that the divisor, which remember the divisor was x squared minus 7, is a factor of the polynomial. So you will have a question on your quiz that will ask you like, is x squared minus 7 a factor of this polynomial? And your answer will be yes or no, and it just depends on the remainder. So divide it. If the remainder is 0, then put yes, x squared minus 7 is a factor. But if the remainder is not 0, like on number 1, so let me look at number 1. Number 1, notice how at the very end, the remainder was 4x minus 4. So that's the remainder here. And that's not 0. So that's why on my answer, I put x squared plus 1 is not a factor of the polynomial because that remainder wasn't 0. So make sure you know how to tell if something is a factor of your polynomial based on the remainder. Finally, last thing you need about long division is, okay, what if the remainder isn't 0, like on number 1? Here's how you need you to write your answer. So let me, I guess, box it here for you and label it. Okay. So when the remainder isn't 0, the way you write your answer is you still take your quotient, 3x squared minus 4x plus 9. That's still called the quotient. So quotient. Okay, and then you have to add the remainder. So on number 2, the remainder was 0, so we just left it alone, 3x minus 8 plus 0. But when the remainder is not 0, here's what you need to do. You need to add the remainder, which is 4x minus 4, so that's the remainder, over the divisor. Remember, x squared plus 1 is called the divisor. So in other words, you need to know this for the quiz, how to write your format. So the format answer, here, I'll just write it here again. Answer format. And I think I did write this on the quiz to help you understand it, but the answer format that I'll ask you on your take-home quiz is you need to put the quotient, which is your answer, plus the remainder over the divisor. So let me pause for questions and give you a chance to write all this down, or it's already in the answer key in Schoology that you can download and save. Pausing for questions. Okay, so another method of dividing polynomials besides the long division is something called a synthetic division. So you do need to know how to use both methods. Long division works with any polynomial. Like you can always use long division. But it's not the best because it's too long. That's why it's called long division. So we have a shorter method. This other method is called synthetic division. It's going to be much shorter. So here it is. It's already worked out. And here you get your answer. But the problem with synthetic division is that it only works with linear binomials. So let me write it here. Synthetic division only works when the divisor is a linear binomial. Okay, in case you forgot those terms from last test, a linear binomial is when you only have two terms and that first term is just x to the first power. So that's called a linear binomial. So your synthetic division that I'm about to show you only works when the divisor is a linear binomial. So obviously, if you try to do number 1 and number 2 over here, like you cannot do synthetic division with those because those are x squared minus 7. That's called a quadratic binomial. So it wouldn't work. Okay, so now let's use synthetic division, so which is the other half of your quiz. if your divisor is a linear binomial like x plus 2, we can use this thing called synthetic division. The first step you would do on synthetic division is you take your divisor, so x plus 2, and you basically set it equal to 0 and solve for x. So here, x plus 2 is my divisor, so x would equal to -2. And that's what I'm going to use on my synthetic division. I'm going to take this little -2 and put it in here in a little box, I guess. So -2, box. Okay, now here's how you do it. You take the coefficients of the dividend. So you take 1 from x to the fourth, -14, 51, -54, -110. So I took just the coefficients. And now what you'll do, here's the steps or the process of synthetic division. You start with the very first coefficient, which is 1, and you just bring it down, 1. Now you need, okay, I'm about to like blow your mind, but here it goes. You need to take that 1 and multiply by -2. So 1 times -2 is -2. And you write it on the next column here, -2. Okay, next you bring those down, and by bringing them down, I mean like by adding. So you add -14 plus -2, that equals -16. So you write -16. And now you repeat the process. So here it goes again. Take -16, multiply by the little box. So -16 times -2 is positive 32. So you write that down on the next column, positive 32. And now again, you add that column together. 51 plus 32, I'm assuming that's 83. So you put 83 here. And then we'll do it one more time, and then we'll try our own. So you take 83, you multiply by -2. So I'm guessing that's -166. So that's how I wrote here, -166. I add that column together. So -166 plus -54 gives me this, -220, and then so on. So let's just actually try a synthetic division. The first time is like, what is she doing? But once you practice synthetic division, you'll like it. You'll want to do synthetic division all the time instead of long division. But remember, it only works for linear binomials. Okay, so here you go. Let's try an example together. Number 4. Use synthetic division to divide 2x minus 11 plus 3x cubed by the x plus 1. So x plus 1 is a linear binomial, so we can use synthetic division. Now, just like long division, when you're doing synthetic division, your polynomial needs to be in standard form. So that means like it needs to start with the highest degree. So don't start with 2x. Start with 3x cubed. And then notice how you're missing a x squared, so you still have to put the 0x squared plus 2x minus 11. So we want to divide that thing by, divided by x plus 1. So here are the steps on doing synthetic division. You first get the x plus 1 and solve for x. So pretend that you set that to 0. So here, x equals -1. So this -1 will go in the house, or I don't know, box. I don't know why I keep calling it a house, but a box. So -1. Next, take the coefficients of your dividend and write them here next to the box. So 3, 0. You must write the 0 or you can get it wrong. 2, -11. And now you can just draw a line. And here's how synthetic division works. You start with the first coefficient, which was a 3. Bring it down. So that's just 3. Now you're going to multiply 3 times the number in the little box, so times -1. 3 times -1 is -3. Write it on the next column. Okay, now bring them down again, and I mean by adding. So you go ahead and add 0 plus -3. That's going to be -3. Okay, repeat the process. So that's called synthetic division. So negative 3 times the negative 1 that's in the box would be positive 3. Write it on the next column. Bring these down by adding. So 2 plus 3 is 5. And then one last time, multiply 5 times the negative 1 that's in the box. So that's negative 5. And now you add the last column together. Negative 11 plus negative 5 is negative 16. So that's what's called synthetic division. You can need to practice it on the homework tonight before you take the quiz next week. So now here's how you write your answer once you've done synthetic division. It's easier if I just show you on example 3 that's already done. So the bottom row here, those are the coefficients of your answer. So here, when it says answer, you start with the first one, 1, and it's going to be 1x cubed. And the reason why it's going to be 1x cubed is because it has to be one degree less from what you started. So let me write it here. Answer starts with 1 degree, like 1 exponent less than when you started. So answer starts with 1 degree less than dividend. Dividend. And that's because like you were dividing a quartic, x to the 4th, and you were dividing it by x, so you subtract 4 minus 1, so that's why my answer starts with x cubed. So 1x cubed minus 16x squared. So now you just go down by degree. Plus 83x minus 220 just regular. Now the last number here, the last column, that represents the remainder. Remainder. I know my notes are a mess, but just save them to your computer. So that last thing is the remainder. So remember, the way you write the remainder is, once you've written your quotient, so x cubed minus 16x squared plus 83x minus 220, then you're going to do plus the remainder over the divisor. So I'm just going to put plus 330 over x plus 2. That's how you write your answer. So let's try that on example 4, and then I'll pause for questions. So example 4, answer. I'm going to start with the 3 here. X to the, it needs to be 1 degree less than what we started with. So we started with x cubed, so this would be x squared. Minus 3x. I'll answer questions in a minute. Plus 5. Plus this last number is always the remainder. So here the remainder is just negative 16 over the divisor. So that would be how you write it. And then remember, you're supposed to like tell me if this is a factor or not a factor. X plus 1 is not a factor of this polynomial because the remainder wasn't 0. So I think I should put that. X plus 1, not a factor. Don't give up. Not a factor because remainder is not 0. So let me stop for questions. And then we'll do the back. Pause. Okay, so let's go ahead and try example number 5 now. Determine the value of k so that x minus 4 is a factor of x squared plus 8x plus k. So we're looking for this k value here. So if x minus 4 is a factor, that means that when you divide x squared plus 8x plus k, when that's divided by x minus 4, the remainder should be 0, because that's what it means to be a factor. So that's what we're about to do. We're going to go ahead and divide x squared plus 8x plus k and divide it by x minus 4. So now you get to choose. You can either do like the long division if you want, or the synthetic division, since this is a linear binomial. I prefer synthetic division, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and synthetically divide x squared plus 8x plus k, and I'm going to divide it by x minus 4. So remember that when you use synthetic division, you first have to solve for x here. Oop. X should be equal to positive 4. Positive 4. So That's what goes in the little box, positive 4. And now next to it would be the coefficient. So 1, 8. The last coefficient is k. So k is some constant. We don't know what it is, but we're about to figure it out. Just call it k. And let's do synthetic division again. You bring the first constant down. And now you multiply. 1 times 4, 4. Next, you add the next column. Remember, we should be adding. 8 plus 4 is 12. Now you do it again. 12 times 4 is 48. And then now you add those together. So k plus 48, that's what I'm going to write here, k plus 48. Okay, that's called the remainder. And just like I said earlier, that remainder needs to equal to 0 because remember that the whole thing was a factor. So this k plus 48, which is the remainder, has to equal to 0. So now you can solve for k very easily. Just bring that 48 over, so k equals negative 48. Pause for questions. You will be doing that on the quiz, so make sure you... Okay, so number 6. Definitely know how to do this. I did put it on the test. And maybe on the quiz? For sure on the test. So number 6. Suppose that the quotient resulting from dividing one polynomial by another is here. Like that's the final answer. Quotient is called the answer. So r squared minus 6r plus 9 minus a 1 over r minus 3. So that looks like the remainder here. So then it's going to ask you what two polynomials are being divided. So that means like now we need to find like the original polynomials. So we need to find the dividend, and we need to find the divisor. Because remember, this is called the quotient. So that's our answer. The good news about our answer here is that you can tell what the divisor is because that's on the remainder, r minus 3. So r minus 3 is the divisor. On the test, I ask you for just the dividend. So we need to just find the dividend. Here's how you find the dividend. Since you have the final answer and you have the divisor, you can just work backwards and multiply the answer times the divisor to get the original question. Because the original question, you divided by r minus 3. So now what we're going to do, we're going to multiply this by r minus 3. So I'm going to show you how to multiply this answer times an r minus 3 to get your original dividend. And it works just like polynomial multiplication. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply r minus 3 times the first, like the quotient, r squared minus 6r plus 9. So we're going to do that first. And then I'm going to multiply r minus 3 times the remainder. So first let me show you r minus 3 times r squared minus 6r plus 9. So let's do that one first. So just use your polynomial skills and multiply r minus 3 times r squared minus 6r plus 9. So in other words, r times r squared, r cubed. R times minus 6r, minus 6r squared. R times 9, positive 9r. Now do the minus 3. Minus 3 times r squared, minus 3r squared. Minus 3 times minus 6r, positive 18r. And finally, minus 3 times 9, minus 27. I think I did that right. We're going to simplify too in a minute. But next, let's go ahead and multiply the remainder, which was a negative 1 over r minus 3. Let's multiply that by r minus 3. Because you need to multiply the r minus 3 times the remainder as well. The good news here is that the denominator here, r minus 3, will always cancel with the r minus 3 because they're the same. So those will always cancel. So the only thing you'll ever have left is just the numerator, the minus 1. So that's how you multiply r minus 3 times the negative 1 over I minus 3. It becomes just negative 1. Definitely on the test, so make sure you know how to practice this. So now let's finish it off. So my dividend, so my original polynomial was r cubed. And then let's combine like terms. This one with this one is negative 9r squared. This one with this one is 27r. And then negative 27 minus 1, negative 28. So that's what I'll ask you for on the test. I'm going to ask you for what is the dividend, and you would just fill in the blank. 1r cubed minus 9r squared plus 27r minus 28. Pause for questions. Okay, number 7. Last thing you'll need to know from this unit. It says, use synthetic division to divide 3x cubed minus 7x squared plus 6x plus 2 divided by 3x plus 2. And then is 3x plus 2 a factor? Okay, so again, one thing you can do here on number 7 is, well, it wants you to use synthetic division, so I guess let's use synthetic division, but you could always use long division. That would be another option. But let me show you how to do it with synthetic division, because that's my favorite. This is, 3x plus 2 is a linear binomial, so that should be good. But the problem is that when you are doing synthetic division, the coefficient of x needs to be 1. Like, it can't be a 3. It needs to be 1. So you have two options here. The first method is just divide the whole thing by 3, and that makes it a 1x. So that's one option. So option 1. And that's what I did on my answer key. So if you do have access to the answer key in Schoology, I went ahead and number 7, divide everything by 3 first. So here's number 7. It became 1x cubed minus 7/3 x squared plus 2x plus 2/3 plus divided by 1x plus 2/3. And then I did the synthetic division like normal. I solved for x, so that was negative 2/3. I put that in the little box. And then I did synthetic division with, I guess, with fractions. So that's one way to do it. But if you don't like fractions, here's another way to do it. Instead of dividing by 3 first, what we can do is we can divide by 3 at the end. So that's what I'm going to do on this video. I'm going to go ahead and leave the problem like that and divide by 3 at the end. And we have to divide by 3 because synthetic division only works when the coefficient of x is 1. Like, it needs to be 1x, which is not right now. It's a 3. So we need to divide by 3. But we'll do it at the very end. So for now, let's go ahead and just solve the 3x plus 2 here, set it equal to 0, and solve for x. Negative 2/3. So it looks like I will be dividing by negative 2/3 in the box. So it's still some fractions. But now these will stay as is. 3, negative 7, 6, 2. And now I can do the synthetic division. So bring the first term down, which is a 3. Multiply 3 times negative 2/3. That's negative 2. Add the column. Negative 7 plus negative 2 is negative 9. Do it again. Negative 9 times negative 2/3 is going to be a positive number. 6, positive 6. Add the column. 6 plus 6. That's 12. And one more time. 12 times negative 2/3 is going to be negative 8. And then, so it looks like the remainder is going to be this negative 6 here. Okay, so let me write down my answer as is, and then I have to divide by 3 at the end. So far my polynomial will have an answer of 3x to the 1 degree less than what I started. So I started with the cubic, so that should be a quadratic. Minus 9x plus 12 plus my negative 6 divided by, okay, so this is where it's weird. So you were dividing by like negative 2/3, so that's how I need to write this. I need to write it as negative 2/3, like x minus 2/3. Wait, positive 2/3, sorry. So I need to write that as x plus 2/3 because that's what I divided by. I divided by x plus 2/3. But we're about to fix this because remember, that's not the final answer. Your final answer still needs to be divided by 3 because from the very beginning, it was never really x plus 2/3. It was 3x plus 2. So we do need to divide this answer here by 3. Divided by 3. So now, final answer. Final answer is going to be, let me write it really small. 3x squared divided by 3 is x squared. Negative 9x divided by 3 is negative 3x. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, now here's again, always with the remainder here, you need to divide negative 6 over x plus 2/3. That needs to be divided by 3. But when it comes to fractions, dividing by 3 is the same thing as multiplying by 1/3. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to multiply negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. And then when I multiply x plus 2/3 times 3, I get my original divisor, 3x plus 2. And now that's the final answer. And I did put that on my notes. Like there's an extra sheet of paper on my notes that I uploaded, and it has this method. So let me pause for questions, and then again, finally, you can I'll finish the video after class on this last example here, example 8, although you won't see that on this year's assessment just because there wasn't enough time to put it all in. Okay, pausing for questions. Actually, I'm stopping the video. Okay, so here is the end of the videos for today's example, number 8. So the last thing about polynomial synthetic division is this thing called the remainder theorem. So I'll just read it to you. If you divide a polynomial p of x of degree at least 1 by x minus a, then the remainder is p of a. So let me show you what that means. Here's an example already worked out. So given this polynomial of x to the 4th minus 2x squared minus x plus 122, what is p of 3? So basically, first of all, we could always find p of 3 by just plugging 3 in for x here. And you can just do 3 to the 4th minus 2 times 3 squared minus 3 plus 122. And that's going to give you p of 3, which it looks like is 182. But another way to find p of 3 is with this remainder theorem. So by the remainder theorem, p of 3 is the remainder when you divide the polynomial by x minus 3. So here's this, here's my work. I divided the polynomial x to the 4th plus 0x cubed minus 2x squared minus x plus 122. I divided it by x minus 3, so basically x equals 3, which is what p of 3 is, x equals 3. So if you do divide this correctly, the very, very end here, the remainder, that is what p of 3 equals to by the remainder theorem. And that's what that is. So let me just show you an example. So let's try number 8 here. You want to figure out what is p of 2 root 3. So again, you could always just take 2 root 3 and plug it in for x to evaluate p of 2 root 3. Or we're going to use the remainder theorem. So we're going to go ahead and divide this polynomial here by 2 root 3. So I'm going to just divide it by 2 root 3 because that's what x equals, 2 root 3. And I'm going to divide the 2x cubed, negative 4x squared, 3x, negative 6. Okay, so I'm going to divide those. And remember, synthetic division, first bring down the first number. So that's just a 2. Multiply 2 times the thing in the box. So 2 root 3 times 2 would be 4 root 3. Now add that column together, and these are not like terms, so you would just leave it as -4 plus 4 root 3. Okay, then you keep going. Let's go ahead and multiply -4 plus 4 root 3 times the stuff in the box, so 2 root 3, and you will need to FOIL that out. So first let's do 2 root 3 times -4. That looks like -8 root 3. Next, let's go ahead and do 2 root 3 times 4 root 3. That's going to be 2 times 4 is 8, and root 3 times root 3 is 3. I'm going to need to move this over just a little bit here. Okay, so now I'm going to add that column together. So I need to add -8 root 3 plus 24. This is 24. That needs to be added to 3. So that looks like it would just be -8 root 3 plus 27. Because 8 times 3 is 24, and when you add it to 3, that's 27. Okay, then do it one last time. Let's go ahead and FOIL and multiply 2 root 3 times -8 root 3 plus 27. So let's do this one first. 2 root 3 times -8 root 3 is a -16 times 3. And then finally, 2 root 3 times 27 is a positive 54 root 3. That's correct. Okay, so add one more time, and this would be the remainder. So first let's do -6 times 3 is -48 plus 6 plus -54 plus 54 root 3. So this is the remainder. And according to the remainder theorem, that's here, that means that the polynomial, if it's evaluated at x equals 2 root 3, the remainder is going to be the answer. So -54 plus 54 root 3. So that's called the remainder theorem, and now you know how you can use it.